Welcome to Spectral Shadows. This is the place where the stories don't just haunt your mind, they follow you into the dark. Before the whispers begin, tell me, where are you watching from and what time is it? Midnight? Or closer to the hour when shadows move on their own? If you're brave enough to continue, prove it. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows and leave a comment with your time and location, so we'll know exactly where to find you. Now, let's open the door to tonight's nightmare. Story number 1. We bought a house. It was the culmination of every dream we'd ever had. The final validating check mark on the list of adult achievements. After years of cramped city apartments with landlords who treated us like an inconvenience, we finally had a place of our own. It was in a picture-perfect suburban neighborhood, the kind you see in commercials for lawnmowers or life insurance. Manicured lawns, big shady oak trees, and kids' bicycles left on sidewalks. It was idyllic. The community was as perfect as the houses. We hadn't even finished unpacking when the welcoming committee arrived. They were led by a man in his late 50s with a warm, genuine smile and a firm handshake. He was the head of the neighborhood association, he explained, and they were all just so thrilled to have us. They brought us a welcome basket filled with homemade cookies, a bottle of wine, and a guide to the local area. Tucked inside the basket was a beautiful, handwritten recipe card. The calligraphy was elegant, and the card was made from a thick, creamy stalk. At the top, it read, "The Community Stew." "It's a tradition," the man explained, his smile never wavering. "Every family makes it once a season. It's our way of staying connected. It keeps the neighborhood strong." My partner, who has always been much more of a joiner than I am, was completely charmed. I was more cynical, but it was a nice gesture. I looked at the recipe. It was strange. The ingredients list wasn't what you'd expect. Alongside things like beef chuck and root vegetables, there were other, more esoteric items. A spoonful of soil from your new garden. The water from the first rainfall of the month. A spice you've never used before. A clipping from a plant that brings you joy. It was quirky, a bit new agey for my taste, but harmless. A local tradition to make the newcomers feel like a part of the community. We promised we'd make it that weekend, and we did. The process was odd. We dutifully collected the rainwater in a jar, snipped a leaf from our favorite houseplant, and bought a packet of star anise, a spice neither of us had ever cooked with. The strangest part was adding the spoonful of soil. It felt wrong, dirty, to be adding literal dirt to something we were going to eat. The stew simmered on the stove for hours, and the smell that filled our new home was not unpleasant, just unfamiliar. It was deeply earthy, with a strange, almost floral undertone. That evening, we sat down to eat. The stew was surprisingly delicious. It was rich, savory, and deeply comforting, with a complex flavor I couldn't quite place. After dinner, a profound sense of well-being settled over us. I looked at my partner across the table, her face glowing in the warm light of our new dining room, and I felt a wave of love and contentment so powerful, it almost brought tears to my eyes. And it wasn't just for her. I felt a sudden, profound affection for our neighbors, for the man who had given us the recipe, for this entire, perfect little neighborhood. I felt like I had finally, truly come home. I belonged. For the next few months, life was a dream. We went to the neighborhood potlucks, The block parties. We made friends. The warmth and affection I'd felt after that first stew never really faded. It became our new normal. The cynicism I'd carried with me my whole life just melted away. Why be cynical when life was so good? But because my old cynical self wasn't quite dead, I started to notice things. Small, perfect details that, when added up, began to feel deeply, fundamentally wrong. No one ever got sick, not even a cold. Kids would play together in the rain and never get the sniffles. The older residents were all hale and hearty, their skin smooth, their eyes bright. The gardens. Oh, the gardens. Every single house had an impossibly lush, vibrant garden, bursting with flowers and produce, with not a single weed or pest in sight. Our own sad little patch of dirt, which we had struggled with, was now a riot of color, seemingly overnight. And the biggest thing, no one ever left. In the entire time we were there, not a single for sale sign ever appeared on a lawn. People who lived here stayed here. It was a perfect, stable, unchanging paradise. Then about a month ago, the old man who lived down the street from us passed away. He was 102, and he died peacefully in his sleep. The neighborhood's reaction was one of gentle, respectful sadness. They organized a memorial service in the community park. There was no funeral, no talk of family from out of town. It was all handled internally. 2 weeks later, a new family moved into his house. A young couple, just like us, with wide, hopeful eyes. I watched from my window as the welcoming committee, led by the same smiling man, went to their door. I saw them present the same welcome basket. I knew it contained the same recipe card. A few weeks after that, I was woken in the middle of the night by the sound of a car engine. I looked out the window and saw the new husband, down the street, frantically packing bags into his car. His movements were jerky, terrified. He kept looking over his shoulder at his own dark house. Then he got in the car and sped away, his tires squealing in the quiet night. The next morning, his wife reported him missing. The neighborhood sprang into action. Search parties were organized. Flyers with his smiling face were printed and posted on every lamppost. The community rallied around the distraught wife with a practiced, seamless efficiency, but their efforts felt hollow, theatrical. The search parties would comb the nearby woods with a great show of diligence, but their faces were calm, their conversations cheerful. It was a performance. That evening, the head of the association called a neighborhood meeting. He stood before us, his face a mask of solemn sadness. "I have terrible news," he announced. "Our search is over. We found him. It appears he lost control of his car on the old mountain road. It went into a ravine, struck a tree. He was gone instantly." There was a collective, practiced gasp from the crowd. The sheriff's office has been notified, but it seems he had been drinking heavily. A tragic, senseless accident. He let that hang in the air for a moment. "The important thing now," he continued, his voice full of a reassuring warmth, "is that we take care of our own. His wife is now one of us, a part of our community, and we will support her through this." A cold, sharp sliver of my old, cynical self cut through the warm, soupy contentment in my brain. "Wait," I said, my voice sounding loud and harsh in the respectful silence. "Shouldn't we call the police? An ambulance? Don't they need to recover the body?" The man's warm smile tightened almost imperceptibly at the edges. "That won't be necessary, son. A few of us, We took care of it. We brought him home. He's been buried in his own garden, at peace. There's no need to involve outsiders and complicate things with messy reports and investigations. We are a community. We handle our own affairs. But that's not right. I started to argue, a sense of profound, dizzying wrongness washing over me. That's not legal. Darling, stop, my partner whispered, grabbing my arm, their grip surprisingly strong. Don't be difficult. They know what's best. It's better this way, quieter. I looked at my partner's face. Her eyes, usually so full of life and intelligence, were placid, calm, and utterly, terrifyingly content. There was no doubt in them, only a serene, unshakable belief in the community. That night, I couldn't sleep. The warm, fuzzy blanket of the stew's contentment had been ripped away, leaving me cold and exposed. I had to know what was going on. I waited until my partner was sound asleep, their breathing slow and even. Then, I slipped out of my house and crept down the dark, silent street to the house of the man who had disappeared. I found a back window unlocked. I slid it open and climbed inside. The house was neat, orderly, except for the home office. That room was a chaotic mess. Papers were scattered everywhere. In the center of the floor was a half-packed suitcase, and on the desk, I found his journal. His last few entries were a frantic, terrified scrawl. He too had noticed the perfection. He too had felt the wrongness. But he had gone a step further. He had a background in microbiology. He had taken a sample of the stew to his lab in the city for analysis. I read his notes, my blood turning to ice. It's a fungus, he'd written. A complex, mycelial organism I've never seen before. Highly symbiotic. It seems to alter brain chemistry upon ingestion. Fosters a sense of extreme communal bonding, docility, suppresses strong individualistic impulses like fear and suspicion. It's like a chemical peacemaker. The source seems to be the soil. The soil here is saturated with the spores. The recipe, it's not just a tradition, it's an inoculation protocol. And I have a theory. It connects the entire neighborhood through the root systems of the gardens. It's a single, vast, subterranean consciousness, and we, the people living here, are its fruiting bodies, its caretakers, its components. The fungus has a defense mechanism. I've read about Toxoplasma gondii, the parasite that makes rats unafraid of cats, even drawn to them. This is like that, but on a massive, terrifying scale. It makes you love the place. It makes you unable to leave. It makes you protect the colony at all costs. I have to get out. I have to get my wife out before she eats anymore. I have to leave tonight. I dropped the journal. It all made sense. The peace, the contentment, the lack of illness, the perfect gardens. I ran back to my house, my mind a screaming wreck. I had to get my partner. We had to leave. Now, I found her in the kitchen. She was sitting at the table, calmly spooning something into their mouth from a bowl. The earthy, sweet smell filled the room. It was the stew. "What are you doing?" I hissed, rushing forward and grabbing the bowl, throwing it into the sink where it shattered. "You can't eat that. It's a drug. It's controlling us." She looked up at me, not with fear or confusion, but with a look of calm, pitying disappointment. "Don't be silly," she said, their voice smooth and placid. I was just feeling a little disconnected. "The stew helps. It always helps. You should have some. You've been so agitated lately." "No, you don't understand. The man down the street, they killed him. The whole neighborhood, it's a thing. It's a fungus. It's in the ground." I was babbling, I know, but I was desperate. My partner just sighed, a sound of profound, weary patience. "You're being unneighborly," she said, her voice taking on a cold, hard edge. "You're paranoid. You need to accept the gift. You need to be a part of the whole." She stood up and turned to the counter. I thought she was just going to get a glass of water, but her hand went to the knife block. She pulled out the large chef's knife, its blade gleaming in the low light. She turned back to me, the placid look in her eyes now a terrifying, holy resolve. "If you will not accept the gift of the earth," she said, her voice a calm, serene whisper, "then you are a disease, and we must protect the body." She took a step towards me, the knife held low. I ran. I didn't think. I just turned and fled, out the front door, into the night. I fumbled for my car keys, my hands shaking, and threw myself into the driver's seat. The engine roared to life, and I peeled out of my driveway, away from my perfect house, away from the person I loved, who was now a stranger with a knife in her hand. I sped down the silent, tree-lined street that led out of the neighborhood. As I passed the border, the welcome sign that had seemed so charming just a few months ago, I saw it. The trees, the big shady oak trees on either side of the road. They were moving. Their thick, heavy branches were bending downwards, reaching for each other over the road, making the exit tighter, narrower. My car engine sputtered, coughed, and died. I frantically turned the key, but the engine was dead. I was coasting, my momentum bleeding away. I could hear them now, a sound that was not the wind, a slow, grinding, groaning sound, the sound of wood and earth and roots moving. I threw the car door open and got out. I popped the hood, flicked on my phone's flashlight. The beam cut through the darkness and illuminated my engine, and I saw it. Thick, pale, grasping roots and vibrant green vines were snaking their way through the engine block, wrapped around the pistons, choking the life out of the machine. I didn't wait. I slammed the hood shut, and I ran. The road ahead was my only escape. At the far end, I could see the lights of the bridge that connected our perfect, isolated little world with the main highway. Freedom. But the trees were moving faster now, their branches like grasping arms, the sound of their groaning wood and slithering roots all around me. I sprinted, my lungs burning, my feet pounding the asphalt. The gap over the road was closing. I could feel the roots breaking through the asphalt at my heels, trying to grab my ankles. The bridge was so close. The warm, artificial orange glow of its lights was a beacon of sanity in a world gone mad. I gave one final, desperate push, my legs screaming, and I leapt. I landed hard on the concrete of the bridge's entrance, sprawling, scraping my hands and knees. And the second my body was fully in the light of the bridge lamps, everything stopped. I scrambled to my feet and looked back. The road was empty. The trees were still, their branches high and peaceful. My car was gone. The world was normal again. I'm in a hotel room now, miles away. I don't know what to do. How can I save my partner? She doesn't want to be saved. She is a part of it now. If I call the police, what do I tell them? That my wife tried to kill me with a knife because I wouldn't eat the magic mushroom stew that powers their sentient, murderous neighborhood. They'd lock me up. I'm alone, and my perfect, idyllic life is back there, in that quiet, tree-lined cul-de-sac, being slowly, peacefully, and happily digested. Story number 2. Have you ever gotten one of those chain emails? The ones about a girl named Lucy who hung herself, and if you don't send it to 13 other people, Then she'll appear in your room at 3 a.m. and kill you. You probably shake your head and laugh it off, right? Who even comes up with that stuff? Yeah, I thought that too. It began as any other workday. I was sitting in my office, hunched over my computer, scrolling through the web. It had been a slow week. I'd gotten ahead of my paperwork by 3. So now I was just running out the clock until I could drink myself into oblivion for 2 days. Clearing out my spam folder was about as close as I could get to actual work that day. So I decided, what the hell? After clearing out countless phishing emails and invites to chats with single moms, I came across an email with the subject line, "If you're reading this, I've already killed you." Now, it wasn't the title that piqued my interest. It was the sender. It was Sam from down in accounting. Sam was a decent enough guy, a real whiz with numbers, and he had joined me once or twice on my weekend binges. He never struck me as a chainmail prankster, especially one as morbid-sounding as this. Curiosity got the best of me, and I opened the email. Immediately I was hit with a black screen, and my blood boiled over with annoyance. I was getting ready to call the IT desk when my screen popped back to life. The email was full screen and said this, "If you are reading this, I have killed you. Maybe you would have been safe had you deleted the email. Billy will come for you tonight. She likes to play with her food survive. Her games for 3 weeks, and you'll be free. Or send this to 30 people and share your fate. The clock is ticking, and she is coming." The text was crimson red, and the font dripped and oozed, like it had been written in blood. The borders of the email were styled to be crinkled and torn. Someone had spent a lot of time slaving away on it. A bit more foreboding than I am used to, that's for sure. I deleted the email and sent one to Sam, asking what the hell he was smoking. Within 15 minutes, I heard a faint knock on the door. "Can I come in?" Sam's voice meekly crawled from outside the door. "Course," I said, bewildered. Sam wandered in, quietly shutting the door behind him. He was disheveled, to say the least. His shirt was untucked. A patchy 5 o'clock shadow puckered his face, and he looked like he hadn't slept in a month. He quietly sat across from me, clearing his throat. "Scott, did you read that whole thing?" Sam squeaked. "Of course. Did you send that to anyone else? I think it's kind of amusing, but if Benson finds out, he'll have your ass." I laughed. Sam didn't join in. A look of guilt hung over him. My chuckling died down as I began to shift in my chair. "I'm so sorry. I didn't think you'd actually read it." "I was desperate," Sam proclaimed. I scoffed at him. He was being dead serious. "Your commitment to the bit is impressive, Sam," I began, but was quickly cut off by his sudden outburst. "It's not a fucking bit," he shouted. Office drones from the outside perked up their ears and looked in. I got up, quickly shutting my blinds. Sam continued his ranting. "You'll think I'm nuts, but it's real. I see her everywhere. I've had to barricade my bedroom door at night. She waits outside, taunting me, saying it won't stop her for long. Last night I woke up with this on my arm." He rolled up his sleeve to reveal a deep gash running up his forearm. "Oh, Christ, that looks infected." I gagged. She could have killed me. She got into my room somehow, but she let me live. She wanted me to send those emails. She wanted to spread it was the only way. He continued to plead. I looked down on him with pity. We have had a busy quarter, and I know he's been working like mad to meet the deadlines. I put a hand on his shoulder, and he flinched away like I was a leper. He got up, backing away slowly. "Sam, just calm down," I ordered. "Just send it to 30 other people and you'll be fine." He forced a smile. I already deleted it. Hate those dumb things. You always get a bunch of spam cluttering up your inbox if you do it, I explain. The smile faded away from his face and was replaced by a look of dread. Then lock your door at night. Stay awake and look out for her. He finally replied. He rushed out then, muttering another slew of apologies under his breath. He got a bunch of strange looks as he ran out my door, tanking his office rep for sure. I threw my hands up in the air, flabbergasted at it all, thinking he had just lost it a bit. I went back to pretending to work. In hindsight, I should have listened. That night was the first, and it was the worst. I got home around 5:30 and heated up some microwave dinner slop in lieu of a home-cooked meal. I parked myself in front of the TV and watched The Sopranos for the 50th time. Tony was yelling something about a bird feeder when I heard a massive crash from my room. I sprang up like a jackrabbit, hurrying to find the source. I came to my bedroom to find my bookshelf had collapsed, novels and trinkets strewn about everywhere. I sighed, thinking that maybe I had just overstocked it or something, when I heard a cackle behind me. It sounded like a little girl sniggering at some schoolyard prank. Bewildered, I turned around to see something sprint down my hall, the pattering of tiny feet following it. I rushed out to find nothing, the noise ending as suddenly as it began. 2 rooms away, I heard my TV click off with a sudden thump. The only sound that remained in my apartment was the lowly hum and rattle of my fridge. I made my way back, listening for the pitter-patter of little feet. Slummy jumped, twirling around. My bedroom door had slammed shut. Slam the bathroom door. Slam, slam, slam. The rapid-fire beats of playing the cabinets like percussion instruments. Panic began to sit in as the rational part of my brain struggled for an answer. The only thing I could think of was that someone was playing an elaborate joke on me. The more I thought about it, the more sense it made. Some sick practical joke Sam and his account buddies had cooked up. I was going to slap him upside the head next time I saw his sorry ass. That train of thought was derailed as a sharp pain slid across my thigh, a shrill giggling ringing out as I cried. I buckled under the weight of pain and clenched my thigh. I took my hand away to reveal the crimson stain of red that was beginning to pool. I limped to the counter, scrambling to find some sort of cloth or paper towel to stop the bleeding. I rummaged around my kitchen sink, a slight snickering hanging in the air. It was a teasing laugh, playful yet full of venomous intent. I looked up, facing the window overlooking the street. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw it. It was a little girl, hunched over the fridge. She was perched there like a gargoyle, eyeing me through dirty bangs. She wore a long yellow raincoat, and her skin was pale and ghostly. She was twiddling her thumbs, a blood-covered razor dripping my life onto the floor next to her. Her face was black and white, like it was covered in soot. I looked closer, and I saw it was actually black and white grease paint. She had painted it like a skull, a little reaper right out of a fairy tale. She saw me standing there, a blood-soaked towel clinging to my leg. She broke out in a Cesare's grin, and I felt an icy sting in my chest. The rational part of me still wanted to believe this was a prank. "Who are you? What are you doing in my house?" I squeaked out. "My name is Billy. I just want to play with you for a little while." The girl retorted. Her voice was shrill and playful, like how a toy doll would sound. "Billy. Like the goddamn-it, I knew it. What are you like, Sam's psycho niece or something?" I screeched at the snot-nosed little brat. Billy put her hands to her chin in a thoughtful expression. Sam. Yes, the last man I played with. He got bored and finally followed the rules. She pouted. No one ever sees my letter anymore. It can get awfully boring. She broke out with another case of the giggles, and as the pain in my thigh throbbed, I was starting to get more than a little unnerved. What do you want from me? I questioned the demon child. She was all smiles now. How about hide and seek? You go hide, and I'll seek, she boasted. Better not let me find you, or, well, why ruin the surprise? She cackled and readied herself. She eyed me like a predator and began counting down from 10 in a monotone voice. Suddenly the whole situation felt very real, and I broke out of my stupor and ran out of the room as she got to a drawn-out 6. Where could I hide, realistically? I was 6 feet tall, and kind of burly, we shall say. I thought back to what Sam had said this morning. Lock my bedroom door and stay awake. I ran back to my bedroom door, closing it behind me in a hurry. It didn't lock on its own. I had to struggle to push the fallen bookshelf in front of it. I leaned onto the thing, bracing myself against the door as well. Putting my head to the door, I heard nothing from outside. The only sound was my own ragged breathing. Jesus, I was out of shape. It seems pathetic to be scared of a little kid, probably playing a joke, though if it was one, it had gone too far already. Tap, 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 a soft knock on my door made me jump out of my skin. I repositioned myself as Billy let out an impatient sigh from outside. I hadn't even heard her walk around. She would have to make a noise when she leapt off my fridge. How the hell did she even get up there to begin with? Tap, 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 more knocking, followed by an exasperated thud against the door. Gee whiz, I wonder where he's hidden. Billy brayed loudly from outside. I held my head in silence, foolishly hoping she wouldn't think I was in here. Thud. The door shook with rage as Billy kicked it, a powerful show of force for someone her size. The doorknob started to rattle with anticipation. Again, I stood silent. This is a pretty pathetic attempt at hiding, Scott. It's like you don't even want to live. Then again, no family, no friends. Alone in the dark, watching old TV on a Friday night. Maybe you just have nothing worth living for. Billy mocked cruelly. My heart sank as I slumped back against the door. She was hurtful, but not too far off, I suppose. She gave another half-hearted kick, and the door shook limply. I heard thumping noises leading away from the door, Billy muttering angrily to herself, sighing a breath of relief. I put my head in my hands. I was going to murder Sam, I thought. I would take him out for a beer, slap him on the back and say there were no hard feelings, then strangle him in a dank alley. Even then I clung to the notion that it was just a prank, bro. It was naive of me to think that. Stupid even. The alternative was too horrific to ponder. Clung-clang my head, shot up. Dishes smashing to the floor, it sounded like. I heard Billy laugh to herself, squealing and wooing like a drunken party-goer. As she broke my dinnerware, I heard scurrying around the walls, scratching sounds, like claws being sharpened as they skittered around. Then silence, like someone had placed a vacuum in my apartment. Foolishly, I put my head against the door, looking for any sign of my unwelcome guest. Nothing, not a peep. Snicked a sharp pain in my left hand. I came away from the door to see a bloody kitchen knife bursting outward from the palm of my hand. I yelped in agony and tore my hand away, scrambling away from the door altogether. Billy was giggling on the other side. She slowly slid the knife out of the door. My hand was trembling. A clean cut, but it ached like nothing else. I looked at the slash on my door. Billy's dull hazel eyes stared back at me. It was a look full of loathing and disgust. "Look at you, curled up in a ball, cowering like a little baby." She spat, venom oozing with every word. "Killing you will be a mercy. We just can't have that. Not yet anyway." She giggled. "What the fuck do you want from me?" I cried out in terror. "I want new friends, people who are fun to play with," she said plainly. But I deleted the email." I whimpered. "You'll figure it out. You're a clever little middle manager. If not, then well." She trailed off. She disappeared from view, letting her threat linger in the air like a bad smell. A piercing sound, like nails rubbing against a sandpaper-covered chalkboard board, sprang up behind me. I winced and turned around to see that the sound was emitting from my bedroom window. I wished I hadn't. Billy clung to the outside window. Her hands were curled like talons as she hung outside. Her face was almost the same, her smile contorted, full of jagged teeth. Her eyes were slit like a cat, yellow as the rising sun. She saw me gawking there and waved at me, then disappeared into the night. I stayed up the night, balled up under my blankets like a child. The light in my room was on, and I jumped at every knock and noise in the night. I fell asleep briefly around 4 a.m. and awoke to find a sticky note pasted to my head. It was a little smile with the words, "See you tonight," written on it. Sam was right. She could have killed me any time she wanted. She just wanted to break me first. I found the kitchen to be awash with debris and glass. It was an absolute disaster zone. That was the first night. It has been a week since then, and it has only gotten worse. The following Monday, I arrived at work to find the office drones gathered and chattering like old hens. The news around the water cooler was grim indeed. Sam had been found dead late Saturday morning. He had hung himself. Ricky, also from accounting, claimed his brother-in-law was a cop and had told him they had found a note next to the body. The note claimed that Sam was overwhelmed with grief and couldn't live with his crimes anymore. A bit dramatic, I thought, but I had lost my chance to gain any info on Billy. The workday came and went, and I dreaded being home alone with her. Billy's torment continued. It was as mundane as a knock on the wall, to something horrid like throwing things at me or trying to stab me. Sometimes she would just enter the living room and collapse to the ground without saying a word. She would watch TV, draw obscene pictures with crayon. She would show them to me, like I would be proud. They would often depict a yellow-eyed thing with fangs that was jumping rope, or dismembering a family. She would get this pouty look in her eye, kick me in the shin, then run off to God knows where when I didn't respond to her drawings. I haven't slept in a week. At night, I sleep with one eye open, glued to the ever-growing barricade at my door. When I do doze off, I find cuts and bruises on me. The cuts are getting deeper, the bruises more swollen. I can't do another 2 weeks of this. I need it to stop. She just wants new friends, maybe even someone who will love her. Yeah, I'm full of crap for that last one, but she isn't going to take me. I won't let her. So I came up with an idea. What if the email didn't have to be an email? What if I set her loose just by sending out a mass text or something like that? This might work. If it does, well, better you than me. So remember, if you are reading this, I have killed you. Billy will come for you tonight. She likes to play with her food. The clock is ticking. She is coming. Story number 3. I had a client report a very serious crime to me, and then gave me a copy of his confession for the courts. I'm not sure when confidentiality expires, So instead of sharing my files, I wanted to share the news story I saw about him. Any help or advice would be appreciated. If you're reading this, what's done is done. I'm sorry for everything they say I did. I know that my apologies will never make up for my actions. But it's all I have left to offer. By now, the news has undoubtedly painted me as a bloodthirsty psychopath. But know that I had a good reason for everything. It filled me with immense dread and pain. But for the sake of us all, I had to do it. Sarah's parents. I know you'll never forgive me. I don't expect you to. Losing your daughter must have been heartbreaking, let alone the grandkids. The paperwork and instructions for all of our assets are in the top drawer of the armoire. I have a lawyer on standby to liquidate anything you don't want to provide financial assistance for both of you. I know it'll never replace what you lost, but it should relieve that aspect of grief. The photo albums are on top of the closet. You know, Sarah loved to scrapbook, so any memory you could want should be there. Just know that what I did was not malicious. I did it out of necessity. Hilldale Police Department and any other investigators involved. Everything past this point can be considered my confession. I understand if this document cannot be accepted as of sound mind and body. So I have also dictated this to my lawyer, and he has a notarized copy that should match up. There is no reason for the investigation to continue. My in-laws have no need to be harassed with questions. Let the case close, and let them bury their loved ones. Monday 7 July was awoken from a nightmare filled with gore and violence. At the foot of my bed sat my 2 children, John, 6, and Sally, 9. I got out of bed, got them water, and put them back to bed. On my way back to my room, I slipped on the floor and hit my head. While in my daze, I was met by a dark figure that handed me a book and explained that I would know what to do with it when the time came. I got myself up and returned to bed. That morning, on my desk at work, sat the same book. Its dark brown leather bindings were unmistakable. The pages were brittle and yellowed with age. As I turned to the first, I was hit with an odor of decay and sulfur. The book began. I watched as the lamb opened the first of the 7 seals. I quickly closed it, immediately recognizing its origin. The book went into my bag, and I attempted to finish my day. That night, I was blessed with another nightmare. In this one, the dark figure spoke to me. What I assume were its eyes stared into mine, and in a dark, ethereal voice it said, 2:23. Then I woke up. I scrambled for the book, flipped it open, and there it was, Chapter 2, page 23, and saw what had to be done. I woke Sarah, told her I had gotten a call from work, and left to begin my preparations. When I returned later that day, I called everyone into the family room. They sat on the couch, and I stood before them with an air of defeat. Daddy has to do bad things. Don't worry. Everyone will be okay. Trust me. Sally and John seemed frightened but assured by my fake confidence. Sarah had a look of quiet disgust and fear. She shoved it down to embrace our children. That evening, we had a long discussion where I explained to her my vision, and I showed her the book. After some argument and hushed yelling, she decided that I should seek mental help and gave me a number to call. Instead, I went to the priest. After explaining to him what I felt were the important details, he reassured me that a higher power had a plan for me and my family. His words, undoubtedly meant to be comforting, only cemented in my head what I had to do. I went home that night and prepared for the worst. Before I go on, I'm sorry. This wasn't supposed to happen. I'm no one special. Sure, I had my dreams and aspirations, but then I got married and had kids. I was a normal suburban man with a normal job. I don't know why I did what I did, except that I had to. That part was clear. Wednesday night. July started with Sally. She'd always been meek and soft-spoken, so I knew she wouldn't put up much of a fight. She was still asleep in her bed, so I stood in her doorway and watched her sleep. My little angel, after 2 long years of trying and trying. She surprised us as a welcome Christmas gift. That tiny pink blanket made it so that September would never be the same. When we brought her home, she was no bigger than my forearm. The long nights and endless diapers formed the princess who slept so peacefully wrapped in her big kid blanket that we got her when she went to kindergarten. That long, beautiful brown hair that her mother meticulously brushed every morning became a dark mess as my hammer connected with the cowlick, strike after strike with such fury that my face quickly became painted by the tiny red drops of matter that escaped. She didn't even have a chance to fight before either of us knew what happened. She had lost all grip on her teddy bear and slumped into her mattress. I wiped the tears and blood from my face and moved down the hallway. As I stood outside John's door, collecting my breath and calming my quivering emotions, I heard some motion inside. I cracked the door, silhouetting myself with the hallway light. "Daddy, what's going on?" A tiny voice emerged from the shadows. "It's okay, buddy. Just lie back down." He relaxed back into his pillow as I closed the door behind me. I was already making too much noise, so I had to change my approach. Next to his bed was a stuffed stegosaurus that he got for his birthday. We had visited the Utah Museum of Natural History, and it ignited a love of dinosaurs. He had fallen in love with the giant skeleton on display, and when they had the stuffed in the gift shop, it was a no-brainer. He carried that thing home and didn't let go of it for days. Steggy ate dinner with us, went on car rides, and even escorted John to the bathroom during potty training. The love that he had for us, these prehistoric giants, surpassed that of any cartoon or even graham crackers. The plush fake scale texture added a level of grip that allowed it to easily be used to snuff out his young life. As he squirmed under my weight, I could hear him trying to struggle and plead. As he continued yelling, "Daddy! Daddy, please!" I couldn't help but break down. When his tiny appendages relaxed and gave in, the only sound left was my sobs. I sat on the bed next to him and stroked his hair. I cried so loud that I woke up my wife. I raised my head to walk out, and Sarah's eyes met mine in the doorway. The shock and horror on her face ignited a rage in me that I've never felt before. She knew what I was doing. She knew why I was doing it. She wasn't supposed to be involved. And now she stood there, judging me. I lunged at her and pinned her to the ground. Blow after blow, my balled fists connected with her face until it became an unrecognizable pile of hamburger. When she quit fighting, I stood up and cleaned the blood off my hands. As I looked at the bruises and developing defensive wounds from her perfectly manicured nails, I had a realization sweep over me. The things I had done were all in service of a mission, but Sarah was innocent. After cleaning myself to a point of acceptability, I ran. I hopped in the car and wound up at my dad's. I walked in as he was finishing his cup of coffee before continuing with his morning routine. My physical condition understandably shocked him, and he brought me inside. After assuring him that I was fine, I broke down in tears and explained the whole ordeal. He was dumbfounded. The first thing he did was call the police, report the crime at my house, and then he came to me and started working on a strategy. As an old defense attorney himself, he connected me with one of his old colleagues, who rushed to the house expecting a bourbon and a cigar on the porch. When he arrived, my dad paid him, and he went to work recording this information and arranging my documents. As he left, my father ushered me upstairs and got me into a shower. Once I was cleaned and changed, he urged me to step into the guest room where I am now writing this letter from. I don't know if I can say it enough, but I am sorry. I only did what I had to. I love my family. I will undoubtedly pay for my actions, but I rest easy, knowing that I have lived my life and performed all actions according to his plan and his will. Dad, I apologize for the mess. I know you'll find this letter before the police do, but please return it to where you found it and let them do their work. Thank you for everything you have done for me. Know that you had no part in this. I love you and I always have. I'm sorry for everything. This letter was found near the body of Mr. Caleb Whitmore following a Hilldale police response to a shots-fired call from outside the home. The individual was located in the guest room of his father's house, surrounded by photos of his children and wife, who were discovered earlier that day, massacred in their home. Mr. Whitmore apparently suffered from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Following an in-depth investigation by the Utah Bureau of Investigations, the community continues to reel in the wake of this indescribable tragedy. Story number 4. I know how most of these start. I'm a normal guy with a normal job. My life is normal. Well, let me tell you what happened to me was not. I don't have to work until 10 on most days. I was thanking whatever God that's up there for this arrangement the whole morning as I nursed the worst hangover of my life. The warmth of my coffee seeped through my thermos as I dragged myself down the stairs of my apartment building. My hands were full, so I used my pinky to open the back door of my car. I let out a big yawn and set my laptop bag in the back seat. When I went to get in the front seat, I jumped back, dropping my coffee and letting out an embarrassingly high-pitched shriek. Sitting in my passenger seat was a man. He was wearing a tattered suit. Deep reddish-brown stained the once white shirt. His skin was pale, and his eyes were stuck in a wide stare, I guess. I panicked. I kept having irrational thoughts, like, if I call the police, would they think it's me who did this? Was it me who did this? Will I be charged a crazy fee for calling the ambulance? I can't even afford my Wi-Fi bill. How could I afford to call an ambulance? He'd still be dead even if I drove him, wouldn't he? He would be. That's what I decided. It wouldn't change anything to call an ambulance, and it wouldn't change anything to just drive him. So I'll just drive him to the hospital, explain the situation, and everything will be fine. Swallowing my fear and disgust, I got into the car. I sat rigid in the driver's seat. I started the car and grabbed the steering wheel. I looked over at him again and cringed at his expression. There were slits in his shirt amongst the blood stains. Stan's wounds? With a shaky hand, I shut his eyes. His seatbelt was already on. Did I get plastered and go to the morgue? Where the hell did this guy even come from? I shook my head and started on the route to the hospital. The roads weren't busy, and thankfully I hadn't hit any stoplights driving through town. I couldn't believe it. No stops, no nosy pedestrians, no police. I took a deep breath and rested my head on the steering wheel. I let my eyes shut, and that's when I heard it. Breathing. My whole body jolted up, and I saw him suck in another dreadfully wet breath. Oh, no. No, nope. No. I yelled desperately, trying to unbuckle myself. You're going to go in there. His words came out in airy rasps. And you're not going to come out. Finally, my thumb found the button, and I threw myself out of the car. I mean, literally, like I fell onto the pavement. My legs kept moving without my permission, and I ran through the automatic doors to the ER. The receptionist sat calmly, chewing gum and reading over something in front of her. She jumped up as I clambered up to the desk. How can I... I couldn't breathe. My heart was slamming against my chest. There's a dead body in my car. I don't know how it got there, I know. I know I sound crazy, but really I don't know what to do. Or where it hit. I don't know, please, you have to help me. I blubbered. I didn't think it through. At all. What normal person would believe a single thing that I'm saying? The woman nodded her head slowly and then said, "Okay, why don't you just sit down right over there, and we'll get this figured out." I stared at her, trying to figure out if she believed me, but then did what she said. I sat down so that I could look out the doors. The view was obstructed with causation stickers, but it wasn't long before another person walked through, giving me a clear view of my car. Maybe my sight is going, maybe it's my mind, but there isn't a body there anymore. Story number 5. They said the world was going to end in the year 2000. Even up here, in Russia, people believed it. Not everyone, of course, but enough. They called it Y2K. Some Western computer bug that would make satellites fall, erase bank accounts, and send missiles launching themselves from silos out in the Urals. I remember watching a segment on Channel 1 where a serious man in a cheap suit said that toasters might start fires and that planes could simply drop from the sky. I was 17 then, full of cigarettes and borrowed confidence. I obviously thought the whole thing was bullshit, but my mother, God rest her, filled the pantry with tinned meat and pickled cabbage like we were going back to siege times. My Uncle Georgie, who never trusted anything with wires, buried his savings in vodka bottles out behind the woodshed. In Moscow, there were lines for kerosene heaters. Priests gave televised blessings to entire apartment blocks, and then nothing. January 1st came, and the world kept turning. The lights stayed on. The missiles stayed put. Even the ancient computers at the train station kept blinking like they always did, their green letters shimmering like insects. We all laughed, shrugged, opened our windows to let in the frozen air and the smell of fireworks. "See?" we said. It was all nonsense, but the laughter didn't last. Not for long. It was 3 days into the new year when the thing appeared in the sky above our sleepy town. No one saw it arrive. It was just there one morning, hanging silently above the treetops. It was like it had always been there, like it had grown there, bloated and black against the pale winter sky. We thought it was a blimp at first, maybe some kind of military Zeppelin, a leftover Soviet experiment, finally trotted out for some reason none of us could understand. But the longer you looked at it, the harder it was to believe it had anything to do with us at all. It was too big. Not just big like a plane, not even big like a stadium or a battleship. It stretched from one edge of the woods to the other, blotting out half the sun as it hung motionless above our homes. It didn't move, didn't spin. It just hovered, utterly still, its underbelly a smooth, seamless black. Not metal, no matter. More like glass held just above freezing. Dark, silent, impossibly still. It felt wrong. It was as if the sky had been peeled back, and something huge was pressing through from the other side. People gathered on the snow-covered streets in their winter coats and hats, pointing, squinting. We all just stood there, staring up like cavemen seeing an airplane for the first time. And then it spoke. There was no warning, no radio disturbance, no hum of speakers warming up. Just suddenly this voice, not from above or around, it was everywhere. Inside your teeth, behind your eyes, in the base of your fucking spine. Deep, low, metallic. A single command, booming and cold as the wind outside. Return to your homes. Some people screamed. Most just froze. It sounded like a god was speaking to us. My mother clutched her chest. My Uncle Georgie dropped his thermos into the pile of snow at our doorstep. It came again, even more booming, to the point that I could feel it echo inside my skull. Return to your homes. Most of us glanced at one another, our breath fogging in the freezing air. We didn't say a word. We didn't need to. That deep, gnawing certainty that something was very wrong was evident on each of our faces. A few decided not to listen. Maybe they couldn't accept what they were seeing. Maybe they needed to prove it wasn't real, that it was some kind of illusion, a trick of light, a military drill gone wrong, anything but whatever this was. Or maybe they were just the kind of people who, when faced with something unimaginable, endeavored to step forward instead of back. Brave, maybe, but more likely, stupid. They started walking toward the tree line. Two men, a teenage girl and someone's grandmother I recognized by her limp. They hadn't taken more than 10 steps before it happened. From underneath the pitch-black shape, something flashed. Not a beam, at least not at first. It was just a flicker, like a camera flash in reverse. The light sucked in, and then, crack. Imagine the sound of thunder, but somehow underwater. That's the closest thing I can think of to describe it. They didn't scream. They didn't get the chance. They just dropped, all 4 of them, limbs twisted, heads gone. The snow around them went ardied. We all held our collective gasps. I heard someone whimper behind me, or maybe it was me. I don't remember. And then silence again. The giant flying machine, or whatever the hell it was, didn't move. None of us did either. We turned and went back to our homes. For a little while, we thought maybe the rest of the world would come for us. We still had power then. Heat, lights. The old television still worked, though nothing on it was about hostile, hovering aircraft occupying the skies of northern Russia. Channel 1 was showing a cooking program the morning after the killings, cheerful and oblivious. We switched through every channel, every frequency we could reach. Static, reruns, cartoons. A few looped broadcasts of weather updates for cities that weren't ours. One man on some fringe station mentioned a brief satellite anomaly, but that was it. The feed cut halfway through his subsequent sentence and never came back. And then, the lights went out. No buzz, no flicker, no surge. Just gone. The heaters shut down. The refrigerator stopped humming. We were drenched in sudden freezing darkness. You could hear the walls creak as the cold began to slip its fingers into every corner of the house. My mother went to the window and pulled the curtain back. With a hand that was already shaking, it was still there. Its scale never got easier to understand. My mind kept trying to shrink it, to make it make sense, but it couldn't. It was too big for that. Bigger than anything humans were supposed to be able to make. It wasn't just above the town, it was over it. A lid over a pot, round, smooth, almost gentle in its shape. Half of it disappeared into the clouds, which parted and curled around it like smoke. At times, it reminded me of an enormous black egg, pressing down against the firmament, as if the sky itself was straining to lay the damn thing. It gave off no glow, no signal, no gleam of acknowledgement that it even noticed us. And that, I think, was the worst part. It didn't look angry. It looked patient. Days passed, then weeks. People kept to their homes. No one had to say the quiet part out loud. We all remembered what had happened to the first 4 who stepped out of line. But eventually, as strange as it might sound, we kind of got used to it. The voice didn't come back. There were no further announcements or warning lights. People inevitably got bolder. First, a few children wandered into the yards. Then a neighbor swept snow off his steps. Then someone started hauling water from the old well behind the post office. And nothing happened. We were afraid. Yes. But you can only keep people cooped up for so long before they get tired of waiting for permission. Soon the streets were full again. Not bustling, but alive. Quiet movements. Nervous conversations. Shovels scraping. Cans being traded. And then the stories started. Rumors passed over fences and under doors. Someone said a teenager from the outskirts tried to hike through the woods toward the main road. He made it almost a kilometer in before the light came. Another said it was a hunter this time. One of the old fossils who still kept snares in the trees. His dog came back without him, shivering and half-mad, soaked in blood that wasn't its own. But eventually, they stopped being rumors. We started seeing it. Every time someone strayed too far, too deep into the woods or too far out past the town's edge, the beam would come. No warning, just a flicker. A sound like thunder cracking underwater, and then silence again. Nothing left but a name for us to whisper behind closed doors. It didn't seem to matter why you went, or who you were. The boundary was invisible, but real. An imaginary fence built by something that didn't care if we understood the rules, only that we obeyed them. Really, what choice did we have? We lit fires. We rationed what supplies we had left. We walked in circles around a town we could no longer leave. And all the while, the thing above us watched. If it was even watching at all, maybe it was just waiting. For what, though? None of us could even begin to guess. It didn't take long for my uncle to snap into full conspiracy mode. He started talking about government experiments, alien invasions, and divine punishment. Whatever theory fits the day. Normally I'd have laughed at him, called him a drunk or a nutcase. But given the circumstances, I couldn't blame him, even if his ramblings weren't helping alleviate tensions. Because the fact was, none of us had answers. In the vacuum of overwhelming certainty, anything started to sound believable. Even the crazy stuff. Fuck, especially the crazy stuff. Then one night, maybe a full month in, I saw something fall. I was sitting at the window like I usually did, smoking what passed for a cigarette, and just watching the thing. It hung there in the sky like some colossal black tumor nestled in the stars, bigger than it had any right to be. I wasn't expecting anything to happen. Hell, I wasn't even really awake, just caught in that exhausted trance we all seemed to live in by then. And then I saw something small, something glowing, detach from the bottom of it. It was faint, pale blue. It drifted downward in a slow, unnatural arc. Too gradual to be a flare, too quiet to be a drone. I watched it sink behind the rooftops on the far side of town, over near the old lumber yard. What was left of it anyway. I didn't wake my mother, didn't tell Georgie, didn't even go outside. I just stubbed out the cigarette and went to bed. I don't know why. Maybe some part of me already knew that whatever it was, I didn't want to understand it. After that, things changed. Yelena, my neighbor, used to talk the paint off the walls. You couldn't check the mailbox without getting a 10-minute recap of her week, her ailments, her sister's awful new boyfriend in Novosibirsk. Then one day she just randomly stopped coming out. Didn't wave, didn't smile. Just stood behind her living room window day after day, eyes fixed upward, mouth slightly agape. I waved to her once. She didn't even blink. And then there was Pavel, the pharmacist. A kind man, soft-spoken, always smelled faintly of peppermint and rubbing alcohol. One morning I saw him crouched in the snow outside his shop, drawing in the slush with a stick. At first, I thought it was a game, maybe something for the neighborhood kids. But when I looked closer, the shapes were all wrong. Big looping spirals, jagged grids, crooked boxes nested inside one another like Matryoshka dolls. Only they didn't fit together right. When I asked him what he was doing, he didn't even look at me. Just kept whispering under his breath and drawing like it was the only thing keeping him warm. The strange behavior didn't stop with Yelena and Pavel. If anything, it spread. At first it was subtle. People were quieter in general. They started forgetting things, sometimes staring off at nothing for whole minutes before snapping back to the present. There was this eerie stillness, like the whole town had been gently sedated. I once watched a man walk into the middle of the square and just stand there with his arms hanging loose at his sides, lips moving in slow, silent repetition. Marina from the bakery stopped baking altogether and instead started organizing her shelves by color and shape. The entire front of her shop became this mad little mosaic of flour bags and canned goods, like some deranged art installation. And no one said a word. The madness was quiet, not violent. It was as if something was rewiring us from the inside, one synapse at a time. Then the disappearances started. A boy from the northern blocks didn't come home. His mother wandered the streets, asking if anyone had seen him, but her voice sounded distant, like she didn't really expect an answer. A day later, the ice over the nearby lake broke, but there was no body. Just his scarf hanging over the frozen reeds, clean and dry. Still no one panicked. No one rioted or rallied or stormed the woods with torches. We didn't know what we were up against, and that made it easier to pretend we weren't up against anything at all. Until the day I saw it. It wasn't night, or some foggy cinematic hour. It was noon. The kind of dull, brittle daylight you only get up north, where everything feels sharp and colorless. I'd gone out to fetch fuel for the generator. My uncle had gone missing earlier that morning, and I needed something to do besides sit there waiting for the worst. That's when I found him, behind the shed, near the old dried-up riverbed, along with something else. At first I thought it was a deer, maybe a moose, something large and hunched over the snow, with a crown of tangled shapes arising from its back, or maybe its head. It was hard to tell from the angle. Antlers, I figured, misshapen, maybe frostbitten, something wild and possibly injured. That was my first thought. But then it moved, and I realized it couldn't be any animal I knew. It didn't jerk or flinch or shiver against the cold. It unfolded, smooth, purposeful, like a piece of furniture being opened by invisible hands. The limbs, if that's what they were, uncoiled from themselves with a kind of mechanical grace, joints clicking softly in the quiet. It was too fluent, too deliberate. It seemed to operate on pure, raw efficiency, It was crouched over something. At first I couldn't tell what. Just a shape, slumped and pale against the snow. But as the thing shifted, one of its many tendrils retracting with a subtle whir, I saw the face. I saw my uncle's face. He was lying on his back, stiff as a board, eyes wide open and bloodshot. His mouth twitched, ever so slightly, and several somethings, were feeding into his nose. Cables, thin twitching lengths of metal, like worms made of piano wire. They pulsed faintly as they pushed in and out of him, threading deeper into his skull with this slow, grotesque rhythm. There was no blood. Not much, anyway. Just a little crust around the nostrils, like a bad nosebleed. His chest rose and fell rapidly. The muscles in his jaw spasmed every few seconds, as if something inside him was shorting out. The thing straddling him looked almost bored, or maybe that was just me, trying to assign human logic to something that clearly wasn't human. Not even close. It didn't look like a spider. Not exactly. Vaguely arachnoid, to put it charitably. And even that's not a good description. Spiders make sense. They have symmetry, form. This thing had too many legs and not enough structure. Each of its limbs ended in something different. One with claws, one with pincers, one with a needle-thin filament that vibrated so fast I could hear it hum. Another was tipped with a flat disc that pressed itself to Georgie's temple and rotated, slow and wet, like it was polishing bone. It only barely had a center, which was just a cluster of moving parts wrapped in plating that rippled like muscle. Its surface studded with little, blinking nodes. Not eyes. Sensors, maybe. Or cameras. Or something worse. It didn't notice me at first. Or maybe it did, and simply didn't care. It lingered over Georgie a moment longer, one of its finer instruments twitching once at the edge of his nostril before withdrawing, slick and shining with something I didn't want to identify. Then, just like that, it pulled back. All of its wires slithered free with a wet sound, the kind that made my stomach turn. Georgie's body shuddered once, just once, then fell still. The thing rose, not with any kind of organic effort or strain, but like a puppet, suspended upright by strings. Its limbs unfolded fully now, revealing their full, mind-numbing complexity. Some bent in ways that made no physical sense. Others hovered inches above the snow, flexing and recalibrating midair as though gravity were optional. And then it turned, or rather it reoriented. The cluster of its core pivoted with a series of soft whirs and clicks. And suddenly, all those little blinking sensors were facing me, focusing. I didn't breathe, didn't blink. I thought maybe if I stayed still, it would lose interest. But something from within it rippled across its exposed circuitry, and the thing started moving toward me. Its limbs touched down in a sequence that defied rhythm, each step out of sync with the next. They struck the ground in patterns that didn't match. Some of its appendages sank into the snow and stayed rooted there. Others flitted and scraped through the air, twitching like antennae, dragging along the side of the shed with enough force to gouge deep, splintered grooves in the wood. I didn't wait to see what it would do next. As soon as I realized I was its next target, I turned and bolted, boots skidding on the icy path leading back to the house. Branches slapped my face, snow flew up around my legs. My lungs burned, but I didn't stop. The house was maybe 30 meters away, but it felt like a continent. I slammed against the back door, yanked it open with numb fingers, and threw myself inside. The door didn't close all the way behind me. There was no time to fix that. I ran through the narrow hallway, feet thudding on the warped wooden floor, heart pounding at my ribs. I almost called out for my mother, but stopped myself. What would I say? What could I say? Then I noticed her already standing there. She was in the front room, just at the edge of the kitchen. Her arms were at her sides, palms open. She looked eerily calm, though her eyes momentarily flicked toward the corridor behind me. Her breath fogged gently in the cold air, as if she hadn't even noticed how frigid our home had become. I opened my mouth to warn her, but she raised her hand. "It's all right," she said, voice strangely serene. "It's just here for you, just here for me." I backed away, heart thudding now, not from fear, but disbelief. She wasn't joking. There was no panic in her voice, no tension in her posture, just quiet acceptance, as if she were introducing an old friend who'd shown up without calling first. Behind me, the door creaked wider. I didn't look. I didn't want to see it inside the house. Instead, I turned and ran again, this time down the crooked steps into the basement, where the cold was deeper, older. I slammed the door shut behind me and slid the heavy bolt across. It stuck halfway, but I forced it, grinding metal against wood until it clicked into place. The uncaring blackness swallowed me whole. I stood still for a long moment, waiting to hear the sound of it descending the stairs after me. But the silence held. There were only the faint creaks of the floorboards above and the wind outside, brushing against the eaves like distant breathing. In the dim light, leaking through the slatted basement window, I found the old shelves where we kept the winter stores. Cans of beans and stew, glass jars of pickled mushrooms and cabbage, bottles of cloudy water, some frozen solid. I pulled a blanket down from the pile in the corner, wrapped it around myself, and sat on the freezing concrete floor. Might as well get comfortable, I figured. Days passed, then weeks. I didn't leave. When the bottled one ran out, I collected meltwater from the corner where ice crept in through the broken window pane. I ate from dented tins with my fingers, no longer caring if the contents were congealed or expired. Sleep came in fits. My dreams were scattered, full of metal limbs and red lights blinking just behind my eyelids. Sometimes I thought I could still hear it moving upstairs, slow mechanical steps tracing circles above my head. Sometimes I imagined my mother's voice calling me softly, as if to let me know that dinner was ready. But mostly, there was only the cold. Eventually, I ran out of food as well. I waited another day, then 2 more, just to be sure. I listened for any shifting upstairs, but there was only silence. Not the comforting kind, the kind that presses against your ears like static, thick with the absence of everything familiar. On the 4th day, I climbed the stairs. The basement door stuck in its frame, swollen with damp. I braced my shoulder against it, shoved until the latch gave with a brittle clank, and stepped out into sunlight. I wasn't in my house anymore. In fact, I wasn't in a house at all. The walls were gone. So was the ceiling. The cramped kitchen, the lopsided bookshelf in the corner, the stove with the broken pilot light. Everything had vanished. I was standing on bare earth, staring at a sky that was too clear, too wide. The ground beneath me was still shaped like home. Vaguely, I recognized the contours, the slope where our garden used to be, the shallow depression where the road curved past the birch grove. But everything built by human hands was gone. The houses, the fences, the telephone poles, the signs, the swings, the power lines. all seemingly erased from existence. Only the forest remained. It stood in the distance just as it always had, dense and unbothered. Tall pines and ancient oak trees reached upward with no awareness that anything had changed. The crows still called from the canopy, somewhere deeper in the woods. I heard the slow knock of a woodpecker, but where the town had been, there was only open ground. No wreckage, no burned-out shells, just naked ground, open and clean. The outlines were still there if you looked hard enough. Shapes pressed into the dirt like bruises on skin. I could see the rectangle where the house stood, the circle where the well used to be, faint lines where the road once ran. A ghost town without ghosts. I began to walk, slowly at first, then more urgently, hoping that maybe the next street, the next corner, would still be there. But there were no corners, only the same open terrain repeating itself over and over. Hills that rolled too evenly, roads that faded into the earth. It felt like a stage left standing after the actors had gone. The props had been cleared. The play was over. Only the backdrop remained. Above, the sky was empty. The ovoid, dark mass that once hung heavy overhead had vanished without a trace. The spider-like thing, the one that presumably served as an extension of its cosmic will, had disappeared just as quietly. No churning noise in the distance, no smell of ozone, no gouged paths in the forest floor. My mother was nowhere to be found. Neither were Yelena, Pavel, Uncle Georgie, or anyone else I once knew. Whether they'd been taken, dissolved, or simply unraveled from reality, I couldn't say. Maybe they were still there, in some form I couldn't see, spread thin across the air like ash. I never got an explanation. That was the worst part. When it arrived, it simply loomed, and when it left, it didn't take anything you could weigh, or bury, or burn. It took the shape of our lives. It didn't destroy the town. It unstitched it from the world, neat and silent, like we'd been written in pencil, and the eraser finally came. I still don't know why I was spared. Maybe I wasn't. Maybe I'm not. Maybe it was luck, or timing, or something else I'll never understand. And even if I wanted to explain it, even if I tried, who would believe me? It's been 25 years. There's no proof, no crater, no wreckage, just flat land and outlines that have faded almost to nothing. They said the world was going to end in 2000. They were wrong, but only technically. The world didn't end then. Not all of it, just mine. Story number 6. I keep seeing her in the corners of my eyes, even when she's not in the room. At first I thought it was stress, lack of sleep, but it's not. Something about her follows me, lingers, watches, and now I can't tell where she ends and I begin. I know I'm breaking every confidentiality rule in the book, but I don't care anymore. I can't handle this alone. I think I'm treating a succubus, and she's slowly draining me. Her name is Clara T.S. At first, she seemed perfect. Too perfect. Black hair, green hazel eyes, brown skin, a smile that could hypnotize anyone. Calm, elegant, composed. But now, I swear she isn't human. Every session leaves me drained. Sometimes I can't remember the last 10 or 20 minutes. My notes are all I have to piece together what the hell just happened. Session 1, September 8th, 2025. She sits there for 50 minutes, doesn't say a word, just smiles. Later, I noticed a faint reddish-purple lipstick mark at the bottom of my notes. I didn't even remember seeing it at the time. Session 2, August 12th, 2025. She finally speaks. Nightmares, harming people, devouring them. Insomnia is so bad that she hasn't slept in days. No fatigue, though. Like she's powered by something else. Calm, creepy calm. Eyes never leave mine. Low, soft voice, lightly playful. I felt uneasy, but shrugged it off. Session 3, August 15th, 2025. She shows me scratches and bruises on her hands, neck, back, and legs. Handprints. She mentions her partners getting sick after encounters. My stomach twisted. Later, a faint lipstick mark appeared on my cheek. My skin crawled. Session 4, August 18th, 2025. Late night session. She tells me about a dream where someone violently assaults her, eats her. Calm, almost seductively happy. Then I can't forget this. I felt her hand, sliding over my thigh, soft, almost tender at first. For a heartbeat, I wanted to believe it was human. Then the chill hit. Ice, sharp, creeping under my skin. Her nails dragged upward slowly, deliberately, leaving a sting that burned long after she pulled away. It should have been intimate, but it wasn't. It was predatory, completely predatory. That night I fell asleep, drained. I dreamed I woke up in my bed. Clara T.S. was there. I felt her hands on me. I couldn't move. Then I woke up. Again. Same room. Same paralyzing presence. My mind shattered, trying to separate the layers. Every time I woke, I wasn't sure if it was real or another dream. The scratches on my skin were real. Ice burned under my veins. Session 5, August 28th, 2025. She smiles at me. I ask about her nightmares. She describes men attacking her, leaving bruises. And I feel it too. Scratches, burns, weakness, same exact symptoms. I can't stop crying. I've lost control of myself. She steps closer, hands on my chest, on my face. I am not me anymore. My thoughts aren't mine. I feel her inside my head. I fall asleep in her arms. 3:37 a.m. This time, the dream layers collapse. I wake. She's above me, naked, hair gone, skin pale as chalk, blood dripping from her mouth. 2 red horns erupt from her head, eyes deep, unnatural purple. She tilted her head slightly and let out a low, throaty laugh. Soft, feminine, cruel. I jolted awake, sweat shaking, every nerve is screaming. Then I realized I wasn't awake. Another layer, her shadow detached, sliding across the floor, slow, silent, watching me. I couldn't move. Legs wouldn't respond. It lingered closer, almost breathing, almost alive, then merged back with her. She wasn't just in the room. She was everywhere. I tried leaving, canceled appointments, fled to another country. I stayed there for a long holiday, tried to relax and regain some normalcy. But the scratches, the bruises, fucking real. September 11th, 2025, 8 p.m. I walked into my office. The air thickened. She was there. Clara T.S. radiant. Too radiant. My vision blurred. The lights dimmed unnaturally. Doctor, do you feel it too? She whispered, silk coiling around my chest. I couldn't speak. The pen fell. My thoughts weren't mine. She's rewriting me. Eyes purple, skin chalk white, limbs heavy, heart slowing. I'm writing this now. But it doesn't feel like me. She's inside me. The last thing I remember, her tongue brushing my face, body sinking into mine, and a voice in my head. You thought you were helping me. Look at you, you poor little thing. It's okay now. I will help myself. Go to sleep. Notes abruptly stop. The page is smeared with blood. story number 7. I woke up in the dark, gagging in my mouth, the sick stench of chloroform twisting my stomach. I was lying in what looked like a basement, only a thin crack of light coming through. Everything old and damp. Even through the haze, I recognized the figure in front of me as the Uber driver who had picked me up from home. Tall man, broad shoulders, long jaw. The first thing out of my mouth when he took the gag off was, "What do you want from me?" "I just need to keep you here," he said, voice shaky, uneven. "Pan made me. Don't blame me, Miss Sarah, please." Tears streamed down his face. Before I could ask another question, he slammed the heavy metal door shut, locking me in that first week. Every time he came down with food or swapped out the bucket, I begged him to let me go. He never answered, just gave me that sad look, sometimes even crying. His arms and neck had fresh wounds, ones I figured he'd done to himself. Every night, I heard him upstairs, yelling at no one, banging the walls. It was clear that something in his mind was broken. By the second week, I tried getting through to the part of him that pitied me. He didn't look at me with hate, more like he was stuck in something he couldn't control. I told him I'd forget about the kidnapping, that I'd visit, talk to him, and help him figure out what he was going through. He thanked me, but said it wasn't possible. Pan, the voice in his head, was in love with me. Pan wanted me close, and if he disobeyed, he'd be punished. I asked him how long it would take, and he said he didn't know. When I pressed for more about this Pan, he pulled away. I caught sight of the scratches on his arms as he stood. He muttered an apology through tears and left me alone again. That's when I knew I couldn't count on his pity. His madness could kill me at any moment. I was small, weak, and no match for him physically. But I had to try. In the third week, I faked a sharp pain in my stomach. My plan was to act like I had appendicitis. Hearing my screams, he rushed down to check on me. He asked to see my stomach. I let him lean close. When his head was near enough, I swung the hammer I had hidden away after he had let me use his bathroom for a shower. The first hit barely fazed him. He froze, eyes wide with shock. I swung again, same spot. This time, he collapsed, screaming, clutching his head. It was my chance. I bolted for the door, slammed it shut, and locked him inside. His muffled cries echoed behind me. Night was falling. His house was a creaky old cabin with dim lights, rotting wood. On my way out, I understood the noises I'd heard every night. The walls were carved with symbols, marks I couldn't make sense of. What I did notice was the red everywhere. My hand was already on the doorknob to the front door when I heard a strange bleat. I turned and saw a goat standing there in the living room. He was white and black. It didn't move, just stared at me, like it knew something I didn't. Every now and then, it let out another weak cry. His eyes locked on mine so intensely that I felt almost hypnotized by that animal, staring back for a few seconds. What snapped me out of it was when he suddenly rose on his front legs and began what I can only describe as a grotesque metamorphosis, something I'll never get out of my head. His body twisted, his hooves stretched and reshaped into arms, his torso shifting as he screamed. Not an animal's cry, but the sound of someone trapped in unbearable pain. That was when panic finally hit me. I bolted through the house and out the door, sprinting down the dirt road in pure desperation. until I reached a busy street where a family stopped their car and called the police. That same night, 3 patrol cars went out to the cabin. The goat was nowhere to be found. All they discovered was the man who had kept me prisoner. His body was torn apart, his insides scattered across the basement where I had locked him. No investigator ever explained how that happened. As for me, I'm trying to live my life again. I'm in therapy, on meds to handle the panic attacks that came after it all. But the hardest part is still sleeping. Every night I wake up, sweating, haunted by that scream. Story number 8. I am writing this because I know I am going to die in a few minutes. I go out to throw away the trash. Likewise, I want to go back to the series. The front door won't budge. My house is old, and the door is large and heavy. The trash drips onto the floor. Time stands still. Then I see him. A dark foot, still as a tombstone, blocking my way out. I think I'm going to be mugged. It's a man in black. Long coat, high collar, top hat. He shouldn't be there. He won't let me out. I want to ask him to let me open the door, but the words won't come out. I look into his eyes, and I get even more scared. They are round, intensely black, 2 unfathomable wells that trap me hopelessly. He looks like a raven. No, worse. He looks like something that shouldn't be alive. I freeze. He speaks and says to me, "I've come to get you because today you're going to die." His voice has a strange echo. Then he disappears, and the door opens as if it were made of paper. There's no one there. He's vanished. I rub my eyes. Panicked, I drop the trash bag, turn around, and run up the stairs. My heart is beating like a drum, and sweat is pouring down my back. When I reach my door, my hands are shaking so much that I can't get the key into the lock. Finally, I open it, close it, and lock all the bolts. Calm down, I tell myself. It's a hallucination. But then I remember when I was little, and my grandfather died. Before he died, he told me that a man in black had come to find him and announced his death. He died that same day. Then fear overwhelms me again. I find it difficult to breathe. I decide to go to the living room. I pour myself a whiskey. I drink it in one gulp. The whiskey glass slips from my hands. Suddenly the lights go out, and I'm left in the dark. It's terrifying. Why does the power have to go out right now? Just like in horror movies. I go to the kitchen and flip the main switch on the light panel several times. It's useless. There's no way to turn it back on. The darkness stares at me. I feel it. I stand there, petrified, while the darkness whispers in my ear with icy breath. The silence suffocates me. I can't see anything. I think the man in black has entered my house. There he is, motionless and silent, staring at me from the end of the hallway. I don't know how he got in, but I understand everything when he starts moving towards me. It's death. I rush to my bedroom. I close the door and put the chair in front of it so he can't get in. If I close my eyes, maybe all this will disappear. But I know that's not the case. He's there, waiting. Why me? What have I done to deserve this? I'm not special, but he has come. That's why I'm starting to write this message on my cell phone. I know I'm going to die. I'm sure of it. Furthermore, I believe in life after death. Is this the moment? And as I'm telling you this, I realize I'm not doing it to save myself anymore. If you're hearing this, just know it's real. Now he's behind me. I don't know how he got in. There are no locks, no walls, no time to stop him. He's here. He's here, and he says to me, "Hit send." Because you're going to die. Story number 9. It's best not to give too many details. Most of the people in this story are still in their 20s. My family was always heavily embedded in the church. My great-grandfather was the pastor, his wife, the pianist. Together they lead a group of over 20 families from the area. The rest of my family found active roles within the community. I don't remember when the building was finished, but I know they helped lay the boards themselves. The church was way out in the middle of nowhere, on the county line. But they had a neighbor who prevented them from expanding their property. I'm not sure if he always lived there, but by the time they realized they wanted to expand, he was in their way. No one was happy about it. He was nasty from what I heard, and rarely left his little shack. He would leave trash and other gross items on his property, and occasionally barge in on a service. The cops couldn't do anything, and he refused to move. I remember my grandmother and my father arguing one night around Easter about what to do with the situation. I couldn't make much of it out clearly, but I heard my father shout, "That's not how God works, Mom." I didn't realize until much later what had happened. The neighbor had taken his life and left a vague message for the congregation on the front door. Like a true Protestant, I didn't know what he wrote, and I guess it didn't matter too much, as it didn't have anything to do with the church from what I could gather. It was clear that most of the members of the church felt this was God's way of working for them. But it doesn't sit right with me. It's like praying for the accuracy of bombs in foreign countries. It's easy to convince yourself that everything is God's will when it works out in your favor. The building never expanded. My great-grandfather, great-grandmother, and grandfather all died within a few years. They found a new pastor, but he died during surgery, so they found a different pastor. Then he started making the homeless convert before they could receive snack packs, and things really started going downhill. Anyways, a few years back, I was about 20, and I had started leading the youth groups and helped out more with the banquets. We just resumed normal services after COVID, and I think they all hated me a little more. It took a long time for me to reconnect with the church after my transition, especially without the support of my great-grandmother. I was happy to finally be included in my family again, even if it meant being at the periphery of the congregation, but I could feel their eyes on me all the time. My grandmother took a long time to understand, but I think I finally reached her by quoting some Matthew. The Easter egg hunt was coming up, and a few of us were in the kitchen prepping for the weekend. I was a little nervous to be around so many of the elders at once. They can be underhanded and mean without even realizing it. It's baked into them at this point. They'll always look at me like I'm Cain, and the old me was Abel. It was a good evening, though. No microaggressions, no girlfriend talk. None of that stuff that makes you feel like your existence is wrong. I think someone had a talk with them behind my back, which isn't the worst feeling in the world, but it still makes me anxious. The building was old, and each room smelled a different, unique kind of musty. The baptismal tub no longer functioned, and the roof had started to develop what would eventually be its fatal wet spot. I stepped away from the kitchen crew for just a few minutes to go grab something, maybe egg dye, from the back rooms. They each connected laterally behind the main hall, but the doors were all locked, so it was effectively one long storage closet with multiple layers. I had worked my way nearly to the back, where the holiday items are kept, when I felt a gust of wind whirl past me. I was stunned. There's no cross breeze back there, and without any of the doors open. It shouldn't be anything but the stuffy smell of decades-old plastic. I gazed down the doorways and saw the door furthest from me, the exit, closing. Not a slam like you would expect from the movies. The quietest click you've ever heard. Like a diver leaving only a ripple in their wake. And then the next door started to close. Before I could even free my legs from the mounds of cardboard, I was sealed in. I clambered over to the door, intent on ripping the plywood off its hinges. That's when they grabbed me. At first I thought I'd snagged my top on the unhoused light switch. But then I noticed the walls themselves. The wood grain began to separate itself from the boards beneath, reaching for me. Before I could react, I felt the clasp of several hands all over my limbs, and the sound of creaking filled the room. They didn't feel clammy, or warm for that matter. No temperature, no moisture, just pressure. Like being restrained by an iron maiden, the hands kept multiplying, encasing me, covering my eyes and mouth. And then it spoke in rattled clauses. "Young one, why have you shorn your antlers?" They lifted my arms and I felt it smell me, inspect me like a specimen. I couldn't speak. I tried. I've never had anything so blatantly stomp on my faith so quickly. It muttered something in a language that I won't even try to relay. But I could almost swear it was speaking in tongues, just like my great-grandfather would. A lot of shush and holla sounds, almost like it was comforting me. I couldn't tell if it was one being or multiple, but they functioned in perfect unison. The trees do not hear your prayers. I've tried so hard to figure out what that means these past few years. It never stops echoing in my brain, and maybe that's the point. All at once I was released, and the doors were open. I fell, hard, dropped from a few feet. The room had returned to normal. The whole encounter lasted only about 30 seconds. I didn't go back to the kitchen. I walked right past them, got in my car, and went home. I never told my family what happened. I think they just assumed I was uncomfortable with the church environment, which is an easy out for me. About a year after I moved away, the church was condemned. Nothing stands on that property now but the little shack that never got torn down. I recently visited for Christmas, and a conversation came up about the old neighbor and his antics. I guess he had a few realistic mannequins in his yard, and would have used condoms in the lot. Details I didn't retain from my childhood. I'd never been told the message he left, understandably. But suffice to say, the darker side of me was disappointed. It wasn't some morbid indictment. It was just some broken, senseless statement. But I will be in the leaves. Story number 10. I had just finished my night shift and was driving home. The desert air pressed against my skin, cold and sharp, carrying sand that scratched my arms. I had just moved here from the city, and back home, my family always joked about the desert eating you at night. My dad would laugh and say, "You will break down and never be seen again." And my sister would roll her eyes. I never thought it would happen to me. Now my car coughed, shuddered, and died on a lonely stretch of road. I twisted the key. Nothing. The engine was gone. The radio was dead. I remembered my dad telling me about the desert roads during his trucking days. Not the roads themselves, but the roadsides. People walking shadows, moving under the moonlight. Lost souls. Never get out of your car, he said, or you will become one of them. I did not want to get out. The night was thick, almost liquid, and the moon hung low. The brush along the road swayed, whispering with the breeze. Coyotes laughed somewhere in the distance. sharp and eerie. I turned the key again. Nothing. I started noticing shapes in the brush. People, or what looked like people, were gliding just at the edge of the headlights. Walking shadows. Their movements are too smooth, too slow, too deliberate. I swallowed hard and tried not to look directly at them. Then I saw lights over the hill. Headlights moving toward me. Relief clawed at me. A figure appeared walking slowly up the road toward my car. The glare from the headlights blinded me, and I could not make out who it was. My chest tightened. I wanted to start driving to get out of here, but my car would not start. The figure stopped at my window. I flinched. It was him, my dad. He smiled, though it did not reach his eyes. "Hey, how have you been?" he asked. I nodded nervously. "I have been fine." He leaned slightly against the car, just enough to block the moonlight behind him, making him a silhouette. "The desert is something else at night, isn't it?" he said softly. "Feels like the world stops. Or maybe it's just waiting." I swallowed hard, glancing at the walking shadows lingering just beyond the brush. "Yeah, it's quiet." He smiled faintly. "Thanksgiving was nice. The family really misses you." A long pause stretched between us, and I tried again. "Thanksgiving? What do you mean?" "It's July." He gave a slow, sad smile, not answering directly. "We had a good dinner last year, didn't we? Plenty of laughter." He let it hang in the air. "Your sister, she's done with college now. All grown up." I shook my head. "She's still in high school. How can you—" He looked down briefly, sighed quietly, and then looked back at me. "Time moves differently when you're not paying attention. You work too hard, don't you?" I forced a laugh. "Yeah, night shift. It's exhausting." He nodded, as if the previous confusion had never happened. "I know. I remember those nights. You'd fall asleep sometimes without warning, just like that time." His voice trailed off. He smiled faintly, lingering. "I was worried about you." Finally, he got my car started. I exhaled in relief, mixing with unease. He hugged me suddenly. It was too tight, too long, his head brushing mine. "I will see you next month, son," he said. Something clicked. Every week my family visited. On my days off, always. Too regular, too precise. Why, a month now. I started my car and caught something in the headlights. A makeshift memorial. My name scrawled on a faded wooden cross. I froze. Then it hit me. I remembered falling asleep at the wheel one night after my shift. Then a white flash. I gripped the steering wheel. My hands shook. I whispered to myself, barely audible over the wind, "Wait, did I?" Story number 11. Danny's brother was a dick, but he also had the biggest TV, so that's how we ended up at Mike's. It was pretty much what you'd expect. Cheap booze, Mario Kart, and more shit-talking than a Modern Warfare 2 lobby. Another benefit of choosing to go to Mike's was that the guy almost always had weed, so of course by midnight, the entire living room was enveloped in a haze of thick blue smoke. At some point, it was decided it was time for us to go home. By Mike, if you can believe it, and then suddenly there we were, back on the street, stumbling and laughing in the way of a bunch of 17-year-olds who thought they were going to live forever. One by one, we tapered off as we set off for our respective homes, until finally it was just Blake and me. I don't even know where the fuck Reese went. "You know what's fucked up?" said Blake suddenly, turning to face me. We had been walking for the better part of 20 minutes, and up until this point, things had been jovial. Now his expression was somber and intense. like a confidant relaying some critical piece of classified information. What's that? This is right around where that Mallory girl disappeared. You remember from last summer? I thought back to the events of last August. One of the things about small communities. If anything ever happens, you can bet your bottom dollar that come that evening, everybody in town would have heard about it. And Millhaven was no exception. For Mallory Cavish, news came almost immediately. I was in my room at the time, thumbing through one of my brother Dean's old Dragon Ball books, when I heard a sudden commotion from downstairs. Turns out Mallory's mom and mine were in a book club together. We're pretty close, in fact. And so naturally when it happened, my mom was one of the first people who got the call. I'll never forget the look on my mom's face, the way the color seemed to immediately drain from it, as she stood with the phone pressed firmly against one ear, listening wide-eyed, as Mallory's mom had shrieked down the line. They'd found Mallory's body that morning, I later learned, while details of exactly what had happened to her were scarce. Rumor has it that when they'd found her, whoever killed her had gone ahead and removed all of her teeth. If you believed some, and many do, this happened before she died. But of course that could just be small-town talk. Either way, it had shaken the community up pretty bad before things slowly but surely returned to normal, the way they always seem to, in the face of local tragedy. We walked for a while more, Blake and I shooting the shit a little longer before finally saying our goodbyes, and then suddenly it was just me. I walked with my head down and my shoulders raised, suspiciously eyeing each row of corn I passed, just on the off chance there should be some lunatic with a tooth fetish crouched there, pliers in hand. I'd sobered up long ago by this point, and though it was still June, a cold wind had begun to blow in, and I had the feeling rain wouldn't be far off. Sure enough, by the time I finally got to the bus stop 10 minutes later, a fine drizzle had begun. I huddled under the bus stop's meager roof, staring at the rain as it passed under the streetlight above. The light making each drop seem to glow. I've always thought there's something relaxing about watching the rain. I was still staring at the streetlight when I noticed movement in the corn several yards down the road from me. Curious, but not yet alarmed, I leaned forward, squinting against the rain, expecting a cat, maybe, or a raccoon. A man was standing in the corn. I jerked and let out a surprised gasp. He must have been 20-30 yards away, a tall, broad figure, partially hidden by corn. At this distance, he was little more than a silhouette, but there was just enough light for me to make out what looked like a thick wool sweater and large, oversized construction boots. Startled, I immediately snapped my gaze away. All of a sudden it felt important that I not let him know I'd seen him, though I couldn't have said exactly why this was the case. Intuition, perhaps. Is he just standing in the corn? What the hell? Not sure what to do. I turned and fixed my gaze on the road to my left, acting like I was looking for the bus. Where the hell was the bus? Before the compulsion became too great, and I looked back again. The man was closer now, much closer. Little more than a dozen yards. I hadn't even heard him move. What was more, now that he was nearer, I found I could make out more of his features. Long, pale face, big crooked nose, and teeth. Rows of them, yellow and jagged, each one protruding out from his gums like corn kernels. I reached for my phone, figuring maybe Reese could still be nearby, my body acting as if on autopilot. No signal, of course. I looked back again. The man was right across the street now, standing just outside the edge of the corn, facing me head on. The rain fell in sheets between us, but I could still see that grin, all those teeth jutting out of his gums like compound fractures. And those eyes, staring right at me into my very soul. And I knew then that whoever this guy was, he was absolutely unequivocally insane. Went very still as a brief fight-or-flight struggle ensued in my mind. I was just steeling myself to run when suddenly a pair of headlights crested the hill to my left. A hydraulic hiss followed shortly after as the bus rolled to a stop right in front of me. I didn't wait around, threw myself at the doors and clambered aboard, inciting a curious glance from the driver, who grunted but said nothing as I quickly made my way to the back. A heartbeat later, and we were rolling. I stole frantic glances out the window as we pulled away, but alas, my yellow-toothed stalker was nowhere to be seen. I collapsed back into my seat, wet and suddenly exhausted. In the new safety of the bus, I began to question whether I had really just seen what I thought I had. Who the hell hangs out in a cornfield in the middle of the goddamn night anyway? I let out a short laugh as the obvious suddenly dawned. No, dipshit. Not a man. It was a scarecrow. You're in a cornfield. That's what you saw. Feeling reassured, I slumped down further in my seat, listening to the patter of rain as the bus continued to rumble along. We passed one stop. 2. I was just starting to relax again, when all of a sudden the doors flapped open and I sucked in a breath. No fucking way. I watched in mute horror as the man from the corn slowly stepped onto the bus. In the new lighting, I could see my initial impressions of the guy had been way off. He wasn't just tall. He was gigantic. So tall, in fact, he had to stoop a little to stop from banging his head on the bus's ceiling. Thin strands of raven black hair hung from his mostly bald scalp, framing a pale face and 2 piercing blue eyes, so wide the whites showed all around the iris. As if hearing my thoughts, he suddenly turned his head towards me, his eyes finding mine, and he grinned, once more affording me a perfect view of his awful kernel teeth. All the air left my body. There was no way he could have made it here in time to catch the bus. Even if the guy had run at full sprint, there was just no way. His boots slapped wetly against the vinyl floor as he made his way down the aisle towards where I sat. I looked around for help, but of course, there was no one. Probably wouldn't have mattered, even if there was. There are no good Samaritans on public transport. I heard the seat groan in protest as he slowly lowered himself down next to me. He didn't speak, didn't move, just sat there, staring straight ahead, still smiling that awful smile. The smell hit me a second later, a smell like copper and pond water, and something worse beneath, like something that had once been alive and wasn't anymore. And it was all I could do not to throw up all over myself right then and there. I stared straight ahead, frozen as the bus hissed and pulled away once again, realizing with sudden dawning horror that I was now trapped. Probably there had been a time I could have escaped, but that was over now. Did you know your teeth are the only part of your body that can't heal themselves? His voice, when he spoke, was impossibly low, as if summoned from somewhere very deep, but ragged too, like bones being dragged over concrete. It was the sound of glass breaking, children choking. Just the worst fucking sound I had ever heard. What? A person has 32 adult teeth, he continued. Unless they lose some, or take extras, they're also the only part of the human body that won't rot away. Think about it. Every part of you, gone, except for your teeth. He turned his head to look at me, and I was unsurprised to find he was grinning again. I see you, and you see me. We see each other. That makes us friends. And friends share everything, even their secrets. He leaned in close. Can I tell you a secret? I opened my mouth to say no thanks. Or I really have to go. Or literally anything. The man reached into his pocket and held out his hand. Lying on his palm was a fistful of human teeth. There were molars and incisors, and others I didn't know the name for. Their long roots speckled in bright blood. Fresh blood. I gripped the seat in front as the world suddenly grayed around me. I was going to die, I realized. I was going to die. And just like Mallory, my teeth would be plucked one by one from my head, like petals off a daisy, until all that remained was my blood-streaked, gaping maw, fixed in its eternal death scream. They would find my body on the side of the road several days from now, mangled and mutilated, just as Mallory's had been, picked at by whatever carrion roamed nearby. Or maybe not. Maybe instead I would be dragged into the field and left for the corn to consume me, eating me little by little until nothing remained of my existence but a vague sense that something bad had happened here, and to stay away. Would my parents ever find out what happened to me? My friends? Would they come looking? And if so, would they like what they found? Would there even be enough left to identify my body? They're also the only part of the human body that won't rot away. Think about it. Every part of you gone except for your teeth. I kicked him. I didn't mean to. It happened on instinct. My body acting of its own accord as it fought to save itself. To this day, I'm not sure how I even managed it. Given the tight angle, all I know is one moment I was sitting there, staring up into his sweet baby blues. Next, my foot was shooting up and out, while the rest of me swiveled sideways, in a maneuver I would never be able to pull off in any other circumstance. I don't know if I was necessarily aiming for his hand. The teeth went flying high up into the air, scattering in every direction before raining down like some hellish confetti. Immediately, the man let out a wail and dove after them, causing the bus driver to slam on the brakes. He snapped his head back to glare at us. Hell's going on back there. I didn't wait around to find out what happened next. I threw myself over the seat and crashed through the bus's folding accordion doors, punching through them like a fist through a wet paper bag. But not before casting one last glance back at the man. He was still on his knees, hands frantically pawing at the floor as he searched for his missing teeth. Even over the rain and the rumble of the bus's engine, I found I could still hear his voice. 1 tooth, 2 teeth, 3 teeth, 4 teeth. Haha. I turned on the spot and ran for my life. I got back home 5 minutes later. I had run the entire way, unsure whether the man with the yellow teeth had followed me, but not wanting to take the risk. My entire body slick with a combination of rain and sweat. My parents came down almost immediately, no doubt on account of all the screaming. My dad had looked especially pissed, right up until he'd seen the look on my face. And then I guess he must have realized that whatever was going on with me was serious, because a few minutes later he was on the phone with the police. The police arrived 20 minutes later, and I was then hit with a barrage of questions. Giving a description of the guy wasn't hard. When I mentioned the guy's teeth, however, the two policemen had shared a look. And then a few minutes later, There were more cops in my kitchen asking questions, their boots tracking muddy half-moons on the carpet. I tried to be as accurate as I could, but really, whenever I tried to recall anything about the man's appearance, all my mind would bring up was those awful yellow teeth. They found Reese's body the very next morning. His jaw had been entirely removed, and every tooth had been ripped clean out. None of his teeth were ever found. But of course, I know what happened to them, and in the quiet moments between therapy sessions, I can still hear the man with the yellow teeth counting. 1 tooth, 2 teeth, 3. You've reached the end, but the shadows haven't left you. If this story unsettled you, prove you survived. Like this video, subscribe to Spectral Shadows, and leave a comment with the part that haunted you most. The darkness is always waiting, and so are we. Until next time, don't turn off the lights.